Hey everybody, it is Chris, and I've been going over the subclasses in Heroes of Faerun. We're on the last one, the Bladesinger. Maybe saving the best for last, because the Bladesinger is, I think, the most popular subclass in D&D. If it isn't, it's darn close. And the Bladesinger is a little bit unique because we actually have had multiple official versions of the Bladesinger before this point. So this is actually the third official version of the Bladesinger in 5th edition. And each time it gets changed a little more, and it's been changed again. So we're going to go over it. First, let's talk about what it is. So it says, wield weapon and wizardry in elegant tandem. Bladesingers master a tradition of wizardry that incorporates swordplay and dance. In combat, a Bladesinger uses intricate, elegant maneuvers that fend off harm and allow the Bladesinger to channel magic into devastating attacks and cunning defenses. Many who have observed a Bladesinger at work remember the display as one of more beautiful experiences in their life, a glorious dance accompanied by a singing blade. Blade singing is associated with the ancient elven societies that first mastered the art and coined the term. Even today, most Bladesingers still hail from old elven realms, such as Mithranor, or from non-elven societies that share land and history with elves, such as the Silver Marches. Wherever they hail from, Bladesingers take their talents all across the realms to help common people and perform heroic deeds. Most communities greet the arrival of a Bladesinger as a good omen. And they have long since abandoned the idea that a Bladesinger had to be an elf, but originally you had to play an elf if you wanted to play a Bladesinger, but now you can be anything you want. So we're going to go over the features, and basically I'm just going to go feature by feature from the ones you get first, the ones you get last, and I'm going to give you some analysis of each of them. I'm also going to compare them to the version we saw in Tasha's, as well as the version that we originally saw in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. And I'll give you my, ending take on how they're doing at each level and how they do overall. So we are going to start with Bladesong, and what I'm going to show you here is going to include white text, which is in the book. That's what is written, and the yellow text is my notes. So we begin with two features at level 3, and the first one is Bladesong. As a bonus action, you invoke an elven magic called the Bladesong, provided you aren't wearing armor or using a shield. And if you see something underlined, it means that it is changed from the previous version. The Bladesong lasts for 1 minute and ends early if you have the incapacitated condition, if you don armor or a shield, or if you use 2 hands to make an attack with a weapon. You can dismiss the Bladesong at any time with no action. While the Bladesong is active, you gain the following benefits. You can invoke Bladesong a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier, minimum of once, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. You regain 1 expended use when you use arcane recovery. So we get agility. You gain a bonus to your armor class equal to your intelligence modifier, and your speed increases by 10 feet. In addition, you have advantage on dexterity acrobatics checks. And then we have blade work. Whenever you attack with a weapon for which you have proficiency, you can use your intelligence modifier for the attack and damage rolls instead of strength or dexterity. And focus, when you make a constitution saving throw to maintain concentration, you can add your intelligence modifier to the total. And those benefits only occur while you are in Bladesong, which will be 1 minute a few times a day. This is the first published version of the Bladesinger that does not allow them to wear light armor while Bladesong is active. All the other versions gave you light armor proficiency and allowed you to wear it. The original version of Bladesinger in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide gave you 2 uses per short rest. That became proficiency bonus uses per long rest in the Tasha's version. And now we have proficiency bonus per long rest plus 1 for one of your short rests, and likely your first short rest. Probably the most notable addition here is blade work, which is the one that lets you use your intelligence modifier for attacks, as this is the first time the Bladesinger has been able to do that. And I've seen a lot of people talk about trying to work in 3 levels of Artificer so they could take Battlesmiths so that they could use their intelligence modifier for attack and damage rolls. Those players should be very happy right now that that major investment in multiclassing is no longer required to do that. I have seen some reactions online from players who are not pleased to lose the ability to wear light armor. And that's valid. Though I have played Bladesingers before, and I often don't even bother with the light armor. Between mage armor and things like bracers of defense and robes of the arch magi, there's a good chance your AC might actually be higher without it. At least it'll be comparable. I get that at level 3, spell slot to cast mage armor is significant. And I get that there's always a chance of getting caught without it, or your mage armor gets dispelled or something, or for one reason or another, you end up in combat and you don't have it. I get that. But in the long run, I'd say that mage armor is at least as good as non-magical light armor. Certainly, if you come across something like studded leather +3 or something like that, yeah, it's going to hurt that you're not going to be able to wear it. I get that. But I don't think it's that big a deal. Maybe if thematically you just envision your character wearing, studded leather armor or something, that might be a reason to be upset about it. But mechanically, I don't think this is much of a nerf. It's a nerf, but I think it's pretty small. And I think people have been kind of concentrating on the armor thing as well as the attacks with intelligence thing. But I think what is significant here that isn't getting as much attention is the improved recovery. When you get this subclass, you will have a proficiency bonus of 2. So 1 more per day, that's a 50% increase in number of uses. Now there's a good chance as your proficiency bonus goes up, you might be in a point where you don't really run out of uses, and so then the 1 extra use doesn't make much of a difference. Depends on the type of adventure you're playing. It depends on the style of DMing your DM has. So that's going to vary from table to table. But I think for a lot of people, 1 extra use is going to end up being pretty significant for quite a while. The most dramatic change, though, of course, is being able to use your intelligence modifier for attacks. And yes, there is a good chance that at level 3, you're going to have a dexterity modifier of +3 and an intelligence modifier of +3. So if you were going to use a rapier, at that level, it's going to make no difference at all. However, I think this is maybe a lot better than people realize because you're now going to be proficient with every non-two-handed martial weapon, along with simple weapons, and the lion's share of them are not finesse weapons. Rapier is the exception, and now they're all open to you. This means if you multi-class, you can have a lot more options than Vex and Nick, which basically all the finesse weapons have. And if you find a magic weapon, there are a whole lot of weapons that you will be good at using that you wouldn't have been before. So it just gives you a lot of extra options. So we talked before about studded leather +3. Yes, that would suck, but how many magic weapons do you get that aren't rapiers and are not two-handed weapons either? A lot. So this might be the difference between being able to use a magic weapon and not being able to use it. Also, this isn't like one weapon at a time like Pact Blade is. So if you're using 2-weapon fighting, it's going to apply to both weapons. If you really want to focus on a weapon, though, remember, you don't have to use intelligence. That's just an option for you now. So if you look at the feats you want to take and they happen to increase dexterity instead of intelligence, you can make a dexterity-based Bladesinger still, and you won't be punished for it. You can just choose not to use intelligence. I think most people are going to choose to go intelligence, and they'll just choose different feats than they might have if they had been using dexterity. Bladesong has always been a good feature. It was a good feature in the first version. It was a good feature in the second version. But this is the best version of it yet. So as strong as Bladesingers have been, this is already an improvement to them. And the other level 3 feature we get is training in war and song. You gain proficiency with all melee martial weapons that don't have the two-handed or heavy property. You can use a melee weapon for which you have proficiency as a spellcasting focus for your wizard spells. You also gain proficiency in one of the following skills of your choice. You can choose acrobatics, athletics, performance, or persuasion. Both of the previous versions provided proficiency in light armor here, and one type of one-handed melee weapon. You now have proficiency in all melee martial weapons without the two-handed or heavy property, and I'm not sure why they actually even specify that it can't have the heavy property, because If it has the heavy property, then it definitely has the two-handed property as well. So I'm not sure why they put that additional restriction, because it's not really a restriction. Just avoid two-handed weapons, avoid ranged weapons, and you're good. The previous versions provided the performance skill, but they didn't give you the choice, so you couldn't choose acrobatics, athletics, or persuasion. Technically, a Bladesinger should not be able to cast spells with somatic or material components if they're two-weapon fighting because their hands are full. I don't know any DM that enforces it overly strictly, but those are the rules. And here they've turned your weapons into spellcasting focuses. That still doesn't mean you can cast any spells with your hands full according to the rules, just ones that have both S and M components, which the shield spell, for example, does not have. And which means that if your hands are full and it's not your turn and you don't have the Warcaster feat and you want to cast a shield spell, technically speaking, if we're being a stickler for the rules, you can't. But talk to your DM, because in my experience, most DMs are not overly strict about that. The component rules are really convoluted, and if you're carrying a spellcasting focus, you should probably be able to cast your spells. That's my opinion. And I know then I'll always get some comments, why are you making spellcasting stronger than it needs to be? Well, if they made clear, concise rules where they were more restricted, I would follow them. It's not that the rules are giving a limitation on spellcasters that I have an issue with. It's that the rules make the game harder to play. And I like a game that is easy to play. For the free skill we're going to get here, having a selection is better than not having one. And honestly, performance is the last skill on that list I would choose. So giving me those three other options, I think, is just a net benefit. So the Bladesinger has always been good at level 3, but I think it is stronger than ever. Not in every single way. We can point out the armor thing and such, but overall, yeah, it is stronger than ever at level 3. Going to be a really, really popular subclass, even more so than before, I think. Then we get to level 6 and we get extra attack. You can attack twice instead of once whenever you take the attack action on your turn. Moreover, you can cast one of your wizard cantrips that has a casting time of an action in place of one of those attacks. So you can see from my underscores that there are some changes here, although I think for most players, they won't notice the changes. But the extra attack has evolved with every published version of the Bladesinger. The original just offered the standard extra attack, so there was no cantrip option at all. The second allowed you to replace one attack with a cantrip. Now the cantrip used in place of the attack must be a wizard cantrip, so they've added a restriction there, and must have a one-action casting time, so they've added a restriction there. Most cantrips are already action casts, but there's a couple exceptions, and so now you won't be able to do them with your special extra attack. There's technically a nerf here, but it only affects very specialized builds. Like, there was a play that I used and saw used a number of times before the 2024 rules, where you would take 6 levels of wizard to get this extra attack. But what you were really focusing on is being a warlock and your charisma. And then what you'd do is you'd use your extra attack, and your cantrip replacement would be Eldritch Blast. I think the Valor Bard in 2024 has basically eaten that build. The Valor Bard doesn't have that restriction with their extra attack. They don't have to cast a Bard cantrip with their extra attack. So I've seen the Eldritch Blast play with Valor Bards already with 2024, and so, yeah, that'll be the end of it for the Bladesinger, which is no problem. The build still exists. Maybe the most significant thing here isn't the change from Natasha's rules. It's how, when we combine this with making intelligence our attack stat, it's going to affect which cantrips we use. I think we're going to see a lot more True Strike and a lot less Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade. Because, of course, True Strike is going to use our intelligence, and Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade won't. The Bladesinger extra attack, of course, is iconic, and has been a standout feature ever since we first saw it in Tasha's. It's not unique anymore. And, we've got Valor Bards and Eldritch Knights that have similar extra attack features, but doesn't make this less good. It is a very good feature. Then we get to level 10 in Song of Defense. When you take damage while your Bladesong is active, you can take a reaction to expand one spell slot and reduce the damage taken by amount equal to 5 times the spell slot's level. This is a feature that has not changed from the very first version we saw in Sword Coast Adventures Guide. It's always been the same. Originally, I was not a huge fan because, I really value my spell slots. And so the idea of using them up this way, especially, we can use a first level spell slot and cast shield. That's often going to turn a hit into a complete miss. But, whenever we take damage, it just hurts to give up your resource to reduce the damage a little bit. But that doesn't make this a bad feature. It is a nice tool to have to be able to reduce your damage in a variable amount. And what I've found is the more I play Bladesingers, the more I use it, and the more I realize my original opposition to this feature was probably overstated. It can keep you up, it can help you maintain concentration on spells, it can help you keep up Armor of Gathis now with the 2024 rules, and if you multiclass, you might have that spell. All that said, at level 3, this subclass is very powerful, and at level 6, it is even more powerful. So this is really the first time we see a feature that's just okay, but it's not bad. But I think that level 10 will feel a lot less dramatic than level 3 and level 6 did. And we get one more feature, the Song of Victory. After you cast a spell that has a casting time of an action, you can make one attack with a weapon as a bonus action. This is entirely redesigned. In both earlier versions of the Bladesinger, this feature allows you to add your intelligence modifier to your melee weapon attacks while your Bladesong was active. And one of the tough things about that was you couldn't use your intelligence modifier for attack and damage. So there was this conflict, right? If you increase your dexterity, you're not getting the most of this feature. If you're increasing your intelligence, you're not using your best ability with your weapons. So now that they've switched the attack and damage to intelligence, that might have been why they decided to switch this, because maybe using intelligence was going to be a little too good here. I mean, this technically represents the biggest change in the entire subclass because the entire feature here is different than we've seen before. That said, I don't know how significant this change is going to feel. 14th level is really high level, so either you won't get to this point at all, or you're going to get there closer to the end of your campaign. This update does allow the player who wants to mix spells and weapons do that more efficiently than they could before, and assuming that casting a one-action cantrip as part of the attack action triggers this, that's a question. If you cast a one-action cantrip as part of your extra attack, does that trigger this feature? I think it does, but check with your DM just to be sure, because some DMs might interpret making that one-action cantrip part of the attack action instead changes the casting time. So definitely check with your DM before you assume that, but I think it is okay. Anyway, as long as you can probably do similar damage to the original feature, though it is going to eat up your bonus action. This also has a conflict with initiating your Bladesong in the first place. I think at the end, this has similar value to adding your intelligence modifier to damage back when intelligence was not the stat used for attack and damage. So I think we haven't gone down here. I think we've held pretty close to the same. If we had kept the original feature, it would be more powerful now, Bladesinger probably doesn't need that. The Bladesinger is doing fine. So the Bladesinger is probably the most popular subclass in the game, and now we have the third official iteration. And I think it is better than ever, honestly. I think you will have the ability to mix weapon and spell use better than ever before. That's one big advantage of the intelligence-based attacks, is it's going to encourage you to not just be a weapon user or not just be a spellcaster. It's going to encourage you to mix them. And I think that should be fun. So I don't think the popularity of the Bladesinger is going to reduce anytime soon. And that is the end of my series on the subclasses in Heroes of Faerun. I will be going over the other material in there, and Eberron is coming out soon, and I'll be going over that stuff too, don't worry, but I'm going to have a little bit of a backlog for a bit, but I'll get through it eventually. I hope you will join me through all that. Otherwise, till next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.